My father's voice cut through the Christmas dinner like a knife. "Tiffany, you've lived here long enough. You're a leech. You can't stay here anymore." 23 relatives went silent. My brother smirked. My mother stared at her plate. But what happened next turned their perfect holiday into a nightmare they'll never forget. I didn't just defend myself, I exposed every single lie they'd been living. If you've ever been underestimated or called names by your own family, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like button if you love seeing justice served cold, and stick around because this Christmas dinner went from festive to absolutely devastating in under 5 minutes. Let's dive into how one moment of courage changed everything. My name is Tiffany, and last Christmas Eve changed my life forever. But to understand why what happened that night was so satisfying, you need to know the whole story. I was 25, living in my childhood home in Denver, Colorado. After graduating with a business degree, I'd moved back home temporarily while job hunting. What was supposed to be a few months had stretched into a year, and I could feel the family's patience wearing thin. But here's what they didn't want to acknowledge. I wasn't some deadbeat living rent-free. I was the glue holding that entire household together financially. My father, Robert, owned a small plumbing business that had been struggling for years. He was proud, stubborn, and refused to admit when he needed help. My mother, Patricia, worked part-time at a local boutique but spent more money than she earned. And my younger brother, Marcus? He was a 22-year-old college dropout with a serious gambling problem and an even bigger ego. The signs of financial trouble had been obvious for months. Overdue notices stuffed in drawers, whispered phone calls about payment plans. The electricity got shut off twice because nobody paid the bill on time. But whenever I offered to help, Dad would wave me off. "We're fine, Tiffany. Focus on finding your own place." What he didn't know was that I'd already been helping. A lot. It started small. I'd slip $100 into Mom's purse when I knew groceries were running low. I'd pay the internet bill online when I noticed it was overdue. When Marcus got his car repossessed, I quietly paid off his debt and pretended I didn't know anything about it. By December, I was essentially funding their entire lifestyle while they treated me like a burden. The breaking point came 3 weeks before Christmas. Dad's business had lost a major client and they were facing foreclosure on the house. I watched him pacing the kitchen at midnight, stress written all over his face. The next morning, I transferred $8,000 from my savings account to cover their mortgage payments for the next 3 months. I never told them it was me. I wanted them to figure it out, to maybe show some gratitude, some recognition. Instead, Dad claimed he'd worked out a deal with the bank and took all the credit. That should have been my wake-up call. But I loved my family, and I kept hoping they'd eventually appreciate what I was doing for them. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and the smell of Mom's famous honey ham filling the house. The dining room table was extended to its full length, covered in her best tablecloth, with candles flickering between dishes of stuffing, green bean casserole, and mashed potatoes. 23 family members had gathered, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. It was the kind of picture-perfect holiday scene you see in movies. Everyone was laughing, sharing stories, and genuinely enjoying each other's company. I actually felt happy that night. For a few hours, I forgot about all the financial stress, all the secret payments, all the thankless sacrificing I'd been doing. I was just enjoying being surrounded by family. After dinner, as we were clearing plates and preparing for dessert, Dad stood up with his wine glass in hand. The room gradually quieted as everyone turned their attention to him. I thought he was going to give one of his traditional Christmas toasts, something about family, gratitude, and the year ahead. Instead, he looked directly at me with cold, hard eyes. "Before we have dessert, I need to address something that's been weighing on our family all year." My stomach dropped. Something about his tone felt wrong, calculated. "Tiffany," he continued, raising his voice so everyone could hear clearly. "You've lived here long enough. You're 25 years old, and you're acting like a leech. It's time to stop taking advantage of your mother and me. You can't stay here anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. The entire table went dead silent. 23 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. My cousin Jessica's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My grandmother looked shocked. My Uncle Dave shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Marcus couldn't hide his satisfied smirk. He'd always resented that our parents let me move back home while he'd been forced to get his own apartment. An apartment I'd secretly helped him pay for when he couldn't make rent. Mom just stared at her plate, saying nothing. Not defending me, not correcting Dad's version of events. Nothing. My cheeks burned with humiliation. This was supposed to be Christmas, our family celebration, and Dad had chosen this moment, in front of everyone, to publicly shame me. For about 10 seconds I wanted to disappear. To apologize quietly, grab my coat, and leave without making a scene. That's what the old Tiffany would have done. But then something shifted inside me. A year's worth of suppressed frustration and unacknowledged sacrifices bubbled to the surface. The unfairness of it all, being called a leech by the very people whose lives I'd been secretly funding, was too much to bear in silence. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. A leech? My voice shook at first, barely above a whisper. Then it grew stronger, clearer. You want to talk about leeches, Dad? Let's talk about leeches. Let's tell the whole family the truth about who's really been taking advantage of who. Gasps rippled around the table. My Aunt Sarah set down her wine glass with a small clink. Uncle Dave leaned forward, suddenly very interested. I could feel every eye in that room focused on me, but I wasn't embarrassed anymore. I was done hiding the truth. I turned to face the entire table, making eye contact with each family member. When Dad's plumbing business lost the Henderson contract last March and couldn't make payroll, who covered his employees' checks so they could feed their families? Me. Dad's face went white. Tiffany, that's enough. But I was just getting started. When Mom had her gallbladder surgery in June and insurance only covered 60%, who paid the remaining $4,000 hospital bill? Me. Mom finally looked up from her plate, her eyes wide with panic. Where Marcus racked up $12,000 in online gambling debts, and loan sharks started calling the house at all hours, who bailed him out before they broke his legs? Me. Marcus slammed his fist on the table, making the wine glasses rattle. That's a lie. I never asked you for anything. But my Aunt Linda, bless her heart, spoke up from across the table. Actually, Marcus, I remember you calling me in tears about those gambling debts. You said Tiffany had helped you out. That's why I didn't lend you money. I figured your sister had it handled. The room was starting to buzz with whispered conversations. Family members were looking at each other with raised eyebrows, connecting dots they hadn't seen before. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder I'd been carrying around for weeks, hoping I'd never need it. Inside were bank statements, receipts, money transfer confirmations, a paper trail of every single payment I'd made on their behalf. I spread the documents across the table like I was dealing cards, right next to the Christmas centerpiece. These are from my bank account, I announced, my voice steady and clear now. Mortgage payments, utility bills, grocery receipts, medical bills, debt consolidations. The only reason this house is still standing, the only reason we're all sitting here having Christmas dinner, is because I've been quietly paying for everything, while being treated like a burden. The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. My grandmother picked up one of the bank statements and adjusted her glasses to read it. Her mouth fell open. $8,000 to Colorado Home Mortgage? Tiffany, sweetheart, when did you— 3 weeks ago, I replied, to prevent foreclosure. Dad told everyone he'd worked out a special deal with the bank, but the truth is, I transferred my entire savings account to save this house. Uncle Dave was examining a receipt from King Soopers. You've been buying their groceries too? Every week for the past 6 months, I confirmed, along with utilities, phone bills, car insurance, and Marcus's rent when he couldn't cover it. The family was staring at my parents and brother with a mixture of shock and disappointment. My cousin Tom shook his head slowly. Robert, how could you not know your daughter was supporting your entire family? Dad's face had gone from white to red. We never asked her to— You're right, I interrupted. You never asked, you just took. And when I tried to help openly, you brushed me off and told me to focus on my own problems. So I helped secretly, hoping you'd eventually realize what I was doing and maybe, just maybe, show some appreciation, instead of calling me a leech in front of our entire family. Mom finally found her voice. Tiffany, honey, we had no idea. You had no idea because you didn't want to know, I shot back. It was easier to believe you were managing everything on your own than to acknowledge that your leech daughter was the only thing keeping this family afloat. The room was filled with uncomfortable murmurs. Family members were whispering among themselves, shooting disapproving looks at my parents and brother. My Uncle Richard, who was normally very quiet, spoke up loudly enough for everyone to hear. This is shameful, Robert, absolutely shameful. Marcus tried one last desperate defense. She's making this all up, she's trying to make us look bad. but my Aunt Sarah was already on her phone, pulling up her Venmo history. "No, Marcus, she's not. I can see right here where Tiffany sent me money to forward to you for your rent. 3 different times. You told me it was just temporary help between siblings." The web of lies was unraveling in real time, and there was nothing any of them could do to stop it. I looked around the table one final time, meeting each family member's eyes. The disappointment and disgust directed at my parents was palpable. The Christmas magic was completely gone, replaced by an uncomfortable truth that would forever change how everyone viewed my family. I walked over to the coat closet and pulled out my winter jacket. The entire room watched me in absolute silence. "You don't want me here anymore, Dad? Fine. I'm gone." My voice was calm now, steady and sure. "But I want everyone in this room to remember this moment. Remember who the real Leech was. Remember who was taking advantage of who." I slung my purse over my shoulder and headed toward the front door. "And just so we're all clear," I added, turning back one final time. "Effective immediately, my ATM is permanently closed. Good luck covering January's mortgage payment." As I reached for the doorknob, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Angry voices, accusations flying, family members demanding answers from my parents. The festive Christmas gathering had turned into a full-blown family intervention. I stepped out into the cold Denver night, snowflakes landing on my face, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete and total freedom. 3 days later, I packed my belongings and moved to Seattle to start fresh. I found a great job with a marketing firm, rented a cozy studio apartment in Capitol Hill, and began building a life that was entirely my own. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it on social media or call other family members to make sure the story spread. I simply disappeared and focused on my own happiness for the first time in years. But of course, word traveled fast through our family network. 2 weeks after I left, I got a call from my cousin Sarah. Through tears of laughter, she told me that Christmas Eve had become legendary in our family, known forever as the night Tiffany destroyed them at their own table. Apparently, after I left, the family meeting continued for 3 hours. My relatives grilled my parents about their finances, their treatment of me, and their complete lack of awareness about my sacrifices. Several family members canceled their New Year's plans with my parents in protest. The real kicker? Within a month, my parents' house went into foreclosure after all. Without my secret financial support, they couldn't keep up with their expenses. They had to downsize to a small rental apartment, and Dad's pride was permanently shattered. Marcus had to drop out of college completely when his gambling debts caught up with him again. This time, there was no sister to bail him out. 6 months later, I received a letter from my mother. It was a lengthy apology, acknowledging everything I'd done for the family and admitting how wrong they'd been to take me for granted. She begged me to come home, promising things would be different. I wrote back a single sentence: "I am home." Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate planning or calculated cruelty. Sometimes it's simply telling the truth at exactly the right moment, when everyone who matters is listening. If this story of family justice resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible revenge stories. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by your own family? What's the most satisfying moment of vindication you've ever experienced? Remember, the truth always comes out eventually, and when it does, make sure everyone's listening. I'll see you in the next video.